So about a year or two ago, I had this father-son team that came to some workshops, and I almost was going to pick them up as a client. But of course, before you pick somebody up as a client, you have to really look underneath the sheets, peek behind the curtains. The father was, I believe, a retired VP at a big tech, actually a global brand. I'll just leave it like that. And the son was a video game designer, making good money. He'd been designing video games for a good while. So the whole gist of their thing was the father was going to invest, I believe he had said like $300,000 or $400,000 into the son to start his own video game studio and come out with a game. Okay, great. There's a little bit of capital there. Of course, these video game companies start with, millions of dollars or sometimes even millions of dollars just for one game to launch. Now, the son, I said, okay, well, are you putting any capital in? He said, yes, I'm putting in $50,000. Okay, cool. So does anybody else involved? Obviously. So the friend of the son, one of his coworkers or ex-coworkers, and now lives in another state, said that he was going to put in like somewhere between $30,000 to $50,000, I believe it was. I said, okay, is there anybody else that's in it? Now keep in mind, when they had first contacted me, it was primarily about looking up the percentages of, who gets what. So we've got the father so far, right? The main investor. We've got the son. Now we've got the son's friend. And I said, is there anybody else? He said, yes, there's a coworker of my son. She does like graphic design and this type of thing. I said, okay, how much is she putting in? She wasn't putting in anything. Basically, sweat equity, no equity, right? Or no capital, but just going to be sweat equity. I said, okay. First thing I asked the father, because that's the first one that I had talked to, initially, I said, is your son hooked up with the girl? Straight up. I'm a man. There's certain things, when people word certain things, your little antennas go up. And the father said, I believe they might have something going on. I said, okay, so here's the first problem I see. Let's assume your son is hooking up with the girl and they're co-workers. They're not even boyfriend, girlfriend. They're not engaged. They're not married. They're just basically hooking up. And you want to bring her into a company having literally nothing in but some sweat equity. Ask him another thing. I said, how long does it take for, by the way, these are preliminary questions that some of y'all, depending on the type of clients you have or situations you come into, pay attention to the type of questions I asked from the beginning. I said, how long does it take for a video game to actually get designed and then be able to take it to the market? I said, about a year or two. I said, okay. Now let me ask you another question. Has your son signed anything on paper that says he can't create a video game or any type of app or whatever it is while he's working at the current one? And keep in mind, it's a big global brand that the son works at. He said, yes, they signed this, competitors or some kind of like NDA and competitors clauses in there that he can't do what they want to do. I said, okay, so here's the thing. Your son won't be able to work on this company, or the game actually, technically. The girlfriend or boo thing, whatever, won't be able to do it either. And the guy who is also working for a video game company in another state won't be able to do it either, unless you do it behind the scenes. Then let me ask you another question. Who are the technicians? And this goes back to one of my favorite business books, by the way, The E-Myth Revisited. I said, who are the technicians? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, the ones working on the game. Oh, it's going to be my son, the guy, and the girl. Great. Who's going to manage the projects? Who's going to basically be running the whole thing? Oh, that's going to be me. This was the father talking. Okay, great. So now we have the technicians doing the work. We've got the manager overseeing it. He was a big VP at this global firm. Great. Who's the entrepreneur that's actually going to grow it? Now keep in mind, the father was very good at what he did for decades, but he was more operations. I said, who's the entrepreneur that's going to grow it? Who's going to bring this to market? Who's going to get, connected and build the relationships and so on? And the father kind of just slowed down now, because he knew that their structure to begin with was they were missing somebody. So what I recommended to him from the beginning, okay, now keep in mind, there's already kind of conflicts in there, but I told him, I said, imagine if your son were to partner with the studio that he works at for this side project, and you guys are bringing in the capital to be able to get this thing going, because in reality, let's just say $500,000. $500,000 launching a video game really isn't much. Or you could launch the mobile version of it, do an app, which obviously is much less capital, much less needed people. Get that first project going, but obviously, once again, it's either you have to leave the company, do it behind their back, possibly even get sued, once it all comes out later on, because you're working on something while you were employed with the first one, or see if you can partner with them. It was literally within 5 minutes that we were able to determine that. And they were already talking about what percentages to distribute. Okay, she's going to get 13, he's going to get 25, and that's the last thing that they needed to worry about. They needed to worry about the reality of launching this video game, or even making the whole video game studio happen. And of course, the relationship with the girl and the guy. Because what happens if her ex-boyfriend moves back in town or whatever, and now he's, they just lost a graphic designer, or it gets all weird. Those are some of the things that you need to be able to see early on when talking to clients about business or about their structures or whatever it is. So just a quick little story, but yeah, identify quickly some of the ripples that you might be able to have, or even just the structure that these people have to begin with. HamidYaz.com.